Coming up on Influencing Entrepreneurs.
Personal growth happens, and this is the other side of kind of being growth minded, is to be able to grow yourself. And I kind of used the example at AvidXchange. If the business is growing 30% a year, myself as a leader, I better be growing myself 30% a year, or I'm not going to be a very effective leader for our business.
This season of Influencing Entrepreneurs is brought to you by the Entrepreneurs Organization of Charlotte and Spherical Media.
After years of teaching entrepreneurship and consulting business owners, I realized that true knowledge comes from the wins and losses of those entrepreneurs. These are the stories of those business leaders. I'm Cassmer Ward, and this is Influencing Entrepreneurs. I want to talk about, you were mentioning the to get IPO ready, but one of the things you mentioned before were getting accountants and CFOs adopted, which is, of course, my realm. What is one of the biggest challenges you get to having them make these technological leaps or adoptions?
Yeah. So I think, somebody that has been doing anything for a long period of time, whether it be accounting or anything, change is a lot of times hard. For some reason, with accounts on how, bills get paid, they typically have, systems they put in place that are paper-based, manual-based, but they work. And so, usually, an accountant's not thinking, well, I have a problem with how I pay my bills because we've been getting people paid forever. What they don't realize is that it's a step function change in terms of efficiency, productivity when you move from, a manual labor-based process to a digital process. And there's a lot of benefits that go with that related to, visibility, transparency in terms of where all the transactions are, real-time updates, and just be able
which kind of goes over their head.
Right. And be able to leverage your business that as you grow, you don't have to add AP staff. Yeah. But those type of things aren't in the forefront. And what we find all the time is, I call it the millennial effect in our business, is when you have that career, controller or finance leader that's been in the role for a long time, and then they hire somebody new into the business who's digitally native.
Right.
And they immediately they start asking the question, like, why do we do it this way? Yeah. And then, the CFO is like, well, we've always done it that way, because they've never asked a question.
No other way. Yeah.
Right. They never asked a question. And so it's really interesting. So I call it the millennial effect. And I think as we go forward over the next 5 to 7 years, that's going to be the biggest, catalyst for step function change of adoption, of moving these, very paper intensive manual processes to be digital.
So let's talk about, we see that those issues there, but as we get more mature, I guess the polite way for me to say it, what are some of the things that you've resisted the change personally, whether it's in your personal life or your business life? You're like, oh, I'm just not going to do that, but you've eventually had to get on board.
Well, I'm kind of chuckling because I did one yesterday.
Okay.
And that is, I've fought social media from the beginning. So I canceled, closed out my, Facebook account, 10 years ago. As an example, I'm like, I don't need this in my life, and I don't see the value in it. Now as, kind of a public company CEO, in thinking about how do I lean into all the different communication methods, and especially now, a lot of our, investors, we had a big following, since the IPO on Robinhood. It's a very different, demographic profile as an investor is one that I'm used to, interacting with. Right. And so how do I, communicate and have different communication channels. And so now I'm doing something I've never done, which is leaning into, different forms of social media. I went live on my Instagram page yesterday.
Okay.
And so,
are we going to see a TikTok dance?
Exactly. And so I told my son I went live on my Instagram page. He's like, Dad, you didn't have an Instagram page?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, well, now I do.
Yeah.
But I think, one of the things that I've learned is, and we talk about this at AvidXchange, one of the characteristics of our culture, and I think it's also characteristics of an entrepreneurial culture, is a handful of characteristics. One is you have to be growth minded.
Right.
And growth minded, is two things. One is be able to operate in a growth business where change happens frequently and often, and for some people that's paralyzing, and for other people it's energizing. right? And so, for myself, it's energizing. But the other thing,
it's energizing. But I got to ask, is because I've gone through the same realization. Is there a huge uncomfortableness to do that first post, or even to go live for the first?
Yeah, I mean, here what I say is, I think personal growth happens, and this is the other side of kind of being growth minded, is to be able to grow yourself. And I kind of used the example at AvidXchange. If the business is growing 30% a year, myself as a leader, I better be growing myself 30% a year, or I'm not going to be a very effective leader for our business. Right. And so I think personal growth happens when you become uncomfortable. Right. If you're doing things that you're comfortable with, and that's all you're doing, it's hard to grow. It's hard to expand to doing new things. It's hard to be curious. Add new skill sets, things like that nature. And so I try to force myself to do things that are uncomfortable, because I think that's actually how growth occurs. Right.
So does it stop with Instagram, or did you start looking into?
We're gonna, obviously, I've been on LinkedIn, for a while, and that has been kind of my one social media, outlet that I've had. But now kind of expanding certainly to Instagram, Twitter, and we'll lean more into that. And one of the things I'm, planning to do is use, kind of Instagram as a communication mechanism of really more telling my personal story around entrepreneurism, leadership, and kind of creating a platform to help other entrepreneurs and up and coming leaders kind of, how they develop and really share all the lessons I've learned.
So lessons you've learned in the personal growth, I want to, we're going to close out with how you're helping. Yep. But we shared a short conversation about your personal growth, where it started with YEO and all that. Share some of the continuous growth work you've had to do within and outside of your network.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're, I think, started certainly as a Charlotte-based company. We now have, 7 offices around the country, and we're, clearly, we have 8,000 customers in, every state in the country. And so we're, clearly a national company. International is one that we'll be leaning into. And so as part of that, how do I, grow my networks from being kind of Charlotte-centric to supporting, the work in all the offices that we're doing. And I think, as a successful, business, it's really important for us to, I think, support the communities that we're in. The reason that I'm in Charlotte, when I was looking for a place to relocate to after selling a software company I was running in Boston, we looked at about 5 cities in the Southeast and was really impressed with the partnership that Charlotte had between the private sector and the public sector. Mm-hmm. And the can-do attitude of just getting stuff done, how they work together, was really refreshing, especially coming from the Northeast. Right. And that's played out for me. And, in kind of our, grandfathers, as I call them, the, Hugh McCalls and, the Ed Crutchfields of the world, who were, competitors who, as it relates to Charlotte, partnered together in terms of how the city developed and was really built. And that was really kind of an impressive journey to watch them do that. And, if we can do some small element of that and can continue to contribute to it, we'll be happy about that. And so what we did is we formed, it was really the catalyst was Katrina. We call it the AvidXchange Foundation, and it's all about focused on supporting the youth in the communities that we work in. And one of the areas that we're really leaning into is this technology divide between the youth that has more, economically disadvantaged, and those that are not, in terms of access to technology. And one of the things that we believe is if you make an equal playing field and you give the youth equal access to technology, it's amazing what can happen, right? And that initiative is called Tech Rising. We've launched that here in Charlotte. Now have over kind of 10,000 laptop computers that we've kind of distributed to that demographic, as well as provide them high-speed internet access, Wi-Fi access, so they can be on equal footing. And that work is been really rewarding, but also kind of fits who we are as a business, right. Being a high growth software company, technology business, that we think we can make high impact, and we expect to continue to expand that through all the offices that we operate in.
So over time, as you continue to grow, if you were to look at, let's say 50 years from now, they were going to say Michael Praeger and AvidXchange or either or made this impact on the Charlotte community, what would you want it to say?
Well, first of all, I would say that they really transformed how business operates, and this company out of Charlotte actually was the catalyst to eliminate paper invoices, paper checks, right. For middle market companies. So it would start there, and then I would say that people kind of think about the work that I'm doing, our team's doing, and AvidXchange really is some of the work that Hugh McCall, Ed Crutchfield did early, in terms of building Charlotte, that we had, a positive impact in terms of the progression of the city. Do
you have a competitor? Like, do you have your Ed Crutchfield?
I'm really good friends with guys like Rick Elias and Red Ventures, and Doug Webb, the Lending Tree, and some of the other technology leaders. And so we're, none of us compete with each other. Maybe we compete on talent,
right?
But in terms of business, we don't. But that actually forms another dynamic where we can really partner together. We actually different components of our business actually partner with leaders at Red Ventures, that they get together and they talk about current technology trends, the war on talent, all those type of things. And so it's really a collaborative relationship that we have with really all the similar sized technology companies here in Charlotte, that we're all collaborative and brainstorming together. So I think that's a different type of dynamic, which is also helping Charlotte.
Right. Your personal growth on the Instagram side, anything else you focus your time on? Is there anything you say, what, this is where I turn my brain off and I binge watch a show, I go kayaking? What do you?
Well, we live up at Lake Norman, so I love spending time on the lake. I learned a new skill, recently. Again, kind of challenged myself in terms of, doing something new. So I went to eFoil school down in Miami over spring break. eFoil. So it's like a surfboard that actually foils up. So you're about 3 feet off the water.
Okay.
And so this summer you'll be seeing me on Lake Norman eFoiling, in addition to doing all kinds of other water sports.
How important is that? Because my thing is hiking. I'll go out this year. I'm going to Iceland. I'll turn my brain off for 10 days.
Yeah.
Living in a tent, but it is one of those resets that really puts a lot of things into focus. Like you prioritize.
I think, and I'm a big believer in kind of rhythms, and I think a lot of that's one of the key things that I think has been part of our success at AvidXchange. Is how we run the business. And one of those rhythms is that I take the entire executive team, every quarter for 2 to 3 days offsite, and we get out of the day-to-day firefight of the business, and we think about the business. We think about the future strategies, and it's really hard to do those type of things when you're in the business every day. Right. And so we now developed kind of a routine, and we've done it every quarter in, quarter out. About getting the whole executive team out of the business 4 times a year to really work on the future of the business. And I'll tell you, every major strategy pivot that we've made over the years have all come out of those sessions, because the day-to-day is great for execution. But it really doesn't foster new innovation or step function change. Right. And you really have to kind of get yourself out of the forest, get above the tree line, and to really kind of think about, the trends, process things, think about new ways of doing things. And so I think that's a big piece of it. And also I think that applies personally as well, is how are you doing, to recharge yourself. We spent a lot of time talking about that during COVID because, myself and, all our leaders, probably all our employees worked, crazy hours just trying to execute the business. And people weren't taking vacation because there was no place to go really, and so I think it's really important to, do the same thing personally in terms of, recharging, whatever that means for each person, your batteries. So you have high energy, you have fresh perspective, because that's really hard to do when, you're tired and you haven't taken the kind of time to kind of re-energize.
Yeah, and you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others, take care of
Absolutely. Part of being, I think a great leader, before you can be a great leader for other people, you have to make sure that you've done, that for yourself.
Excellent. Well, I can't think of a better way to close out this interview. Yeah. Michael, I really appreciate being a part of this.
Love to, anytime you want me to stop by, chat, love to do it. And you're more than invited to come by the AvidXchange Music Factory anytime.
Influencing Entrepreneurs is brought to you by the Entrepreneurs Organization of Charlotte and Spherical Media. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Nexagy Education or visit CassmerWard.com to catch up on previous episodes.